Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to EDL 615, Communities, Power, and Change. And this is the first module. So I'm going to provide you an introduction to the course, an introduction to myself, and just kind of share a little bit about what you can expect this semester. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Michael Evans. I've been a faculty member here at Miami since 2009. And I have a little bit of a unique position in that I have a joint appointment. I'm in educational leadership, teacher education, and family science and social work. And the reason for that is my area of expertise is family, school, and community partnerships. And so that tends to cut across a lot of different areas. So I was hired in Miami back in 2009, and I do a lot of the teaching and research that is centered in this area. In total, I have almost 25 years of experience in education. I was a former classroom teacher. I taught second grade at St. Catherine's School in Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you look down in the lower left-hand corner, you can see a picture of me back in the day when I actually had hair. But that's my second grade classroom that I'm reading a book to there in that photo. And the reason I share this photo is working in, especially as an inexperienced new teacher, working in a community and a kind of a lower income community that had some challenges. I really learned to rely on family engagement and community engagement as a way to help me become a stronger teacher. And so that really sparked my interest to research and study this particular topic in greater depth. I ended up going to Boston College, where I earned my PhD in curriculum and instruction. I specifically went there to work with a number of different scholars who were doing some pretty cutting edge stuff. And, that's my goal in this course, is to really share what are the current trends, what are the exciting new ideas in their education. Quite honestly, this is not going to be a class where I teach you how to do a parent-teacher conference or how do you, write a weekly newsletter. I'm going to be trying to share with you some of the best practices that are out there across the country that I think are pretty exciting. I am deeply invested in this work. As you can see, I'm currently the co-editor for the Family School Community Partnership book series. I'm also the co-editor of the Journal of Family Diversity in Education that I co-edit with Dr. Erica Fernandez, who's a colleague here at Miami. And a little bit else about, some additional things about me is I have a family of my own. My kids are going through the school system. So not only do I have the perspective of an educator, but I also have the perspective of a parent. You can see some photos there of my family. Well, they're a little bit older now. And then, as the kids like to joke, there's the favorite child of the family, our mini doodle named Sadie. So, all right. So why do we even have a class like Communities, Power, and Change in in this particular curriculum? Well, it turns out that we know over the past 20 years that strong family and community partnerships really make a difference. It's actually one of the most well-researched things in education, and it makes an impact in a variety of different ways. So we know that when we have these strong relationships, that we'll typically see improved academic outcomes for students, that we're going to see an increase in terms of their attendance rates, that there's going to be increased access in terms of pursuing higher education. But one of the things that's often not talked about enough is that in addition to all these positive outcomes for family members and for students, we're also seeing a lot of evidence that there are positive outcomes for people at the school level as well, for people in the community. So we see improved trust, communication, and school culture. And then perhaps as a byproduct of that, we tend to see that teachers have higher rates of job satisfaction when there's positive family and community relationships. We see that there are improved, or administrators are reporting that they have increased job satisfaction when there is a strong family and community partnership presence in their particular school. Now, we know that there's all these positive outcomes, but despite that, many educators, and I'm talking about superintendents, principals, district level people, classroom teachers, tend to really struggle when it comes to making or trying to broker these strong relationships. It can be a real challenge. There's a number of different reasons for this. So I know that this is a bit of an older survey, but I still think it's valuable. Uh, Here we see a survey from the MetLife Teacher Survey in 2005. They surveyed 800 teachers who were within the first 3 years of their career. And you might think that they would talk about classroom management or the lack of resources in terms of what's most challenging for them. But actually, the number one ranked challenge that they identified was parent communication and involvement. So there's a couple of different reasons for this. One of them is that teacher education is historically really not focused enough on the idea of family and community engagement. Now, increasingly, we'll see courses that are dedicated to this particular topic, but that's part of the problem. It's one particular course in the entire curriculum. And so we really haven't seen some of those connections being made across the methods classes, some of the social foundations classes, in terms of like, how do we make connections to families and communities? We also know that oftentimes students can go through their entire student teaching experience and really have limited access in terms of getting to know about families, getting to build relationships with them, getting to build relationships with the people in the community. Oftentimes they're very focused on trying to master the delivery of lesson plans, working on assessment. And it, as you might imagine, highly contingent on who your supervisor, who your mentor teacher is as well. Now, those are some of the obvious reasons about why we see these struggles, but there are some other struggles that are at play as well. I like to point to this particular book, which was written by a sociologist. His name is Willard Waller, and he wrote the book, The Sociology of Teaching. Now, the reason I like to look at this particular book or cite this particular book is that it was written almost 100 years ago. And I point that out because this dynamic, or the challenges of this dynamic, have been around for almost 100 years. His quote that is often cited is that parents and teachers are natural enemies. They're predestined each for the discomfiture of the other. So natural enemies, I mean, that's pretty strong language. So if you read on, what Waller argues is that fundamentally they are set up in this dynamic where they're going to come into conflict. And the reason for this is that a family member, a guardian, or a parent is always going to be looking out primarily for their individual child. That's who they're most concerned about. So that's who they're going to advocate for. Whereas teachers are going to be not only looking out for that child, but they have a responsibility for the 20 or 30, or if you're a high school teacher, 120 to 150 students that they're responsible for in a given semester or a given year. And so he anticipates that there's going to be conflict because they're coming into a situation in terms of different priorities. So I think that that makes sense, but I think that we can also look at this a little bit deeper. This really boils down to an idea of positionality. So what do you see when you look at a particular family? And not only what do you see, but what is it that you're looking for? As teachers, are we expecting certain behaviors from family members? And if they don't meet up to those expectations, do we somehow look at them as being less than? And this is something that goes both ways. That's why I use this particular cartoon. Families, sometimes they look at educators and they might be looking at them from through a very narrow lens. And for those who have been in the classroom or been in a community, we know how these narratives can become very powerful. It might be one teacher who kind of wrecks it for everybody else. And you have now all the parents might think poorly about a group of teachers, but it might have just been one bad apple. Similarly, we can look at parents. It might be one or two parents who are, their behavior is not appropriate. They're making it so hard for educators to do their work. And then it becomes very easy to write a narrative about the entire student or about the entire parent population, even though we're really only talking about a small handful of individuals. So positionality is something that we're going to think about across the entire semester, and trying to think in particular because we're working with educators here in this program, trying to really walk a mile in the shoes of community members or family members and understand how they might be looking at different situations. So as I said, for this particular course, we're not going to be learning how to write a family newsletter or how to do a parent-teacher conference. Instead, we're going to try to dig a little bit deeper into the power dynamics. The idea here is that if we can have a better understanding of these dynamics, then all the rest of these things are going to be able to kind of take care of themselves. So over the course of the next 8 to 9 weeks, the course modules that we're going to work through are going to be focused on parent involvement versus this idea of engagement. So what does it mean to be an involved parent versus an engaged parent? We're going to do a module on understanding the contributions of community knowledge. Where are the opportunities for community voice? We're going to look with a guest speaker in collaboration with the course that you're taking at this simultaneously. We're going to look at examples of communities and teachers and students when they're all working together towards a shared goal. So we're going to watch the documentary Precious Knowledge, and we're going to have a guest speaker who will be joining us for a synchronous class that week. We're going to spend a module disrupting notions of educational leadership. So what does it mean to be an educational leader? Is that just the superintendent? Is it just the principal? Or can we expand our definitions about who might count in a community as an educational leader? Then we're going to get pretty practical. We're going to talk about how do we navigate these complex policy landscapes. There's constantly new legislation that's being written almost on a weekly basis now that's impacting the things that go on in the classroom. So when we have these shifting landscapes, how do we navigate this as educators? When we know that we want to advocate for something for our students or for our classrooms or for our school, how do we understand the community power dynamics in those relationships? And how can we use that knowledge of power dynamics to help advocate for our communities? And finally, once we've worked hard to establish these community partnerships, how do we make sure that they're sustainable? So we're going to talk a lot about how do we create and shape mutually beneficial relationships so that everybody's fully invested. Now, across the course of this semester, in terms of the assessment for this class, I've built this trying to be very practical. So the readings tend to be focused on things that are really ripped from the headlines, things that are going on in real time. I'll be sending you to look at websites. I'll be sending you to look at different newspaper articles. Typically in each module, you should expect that there'll be a quick comprehension check. These should be very easy. These are just 4 multiple choice questions. It's just to make sure that you're on the right page in terms of the comprehension, that you've completed the readings or watched the videos or what have you, and just to make sure that you have a full understanding of what's going on in that particular knowledge. Typically, within each module, you will also have some type of applied knowledge assessment. So you'll be doing some type of assignment while I'll be asking you to apply what you've learned in the module to a real life scenario or to analyze a case study or something along those lines. You should know that these are not major assignments. None of these are really major assignments. There is going to be one interview that is planned in the middle of the course where you'll be interviewing an educational leader. But in that particular case, I've actually given you 2 weeks, so you'll have plenty of time in terms of being able to accomplish that particular assessment. So don't feel overwhelmed with the fact that there's typically an assessment each week because I have been trying to be mindful about keeping it reasonable in terms of the workload. And then finally, for your final project, you're going to be conducting a power analysis. Now, you don't have to worry about what that is now. There'll be plenty of time for me to explain this over the course. What I do want you to know, though, is that in collaboration with the instructor for the other course, we've decided to have this be a shared final project. So you're only going to be doing one final project for both classes. And then we're going to be assessing different parts of it in terms of how that works for your particular grade. So we'll talk more about that when this comes up. But just so you know, we've really tried to streamline this and make this as efficient as possible for you so that you can really enjoy the course and get the most out of it. So I'm really looking forward to working with you this semester. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. The best way to contact me is through email at mevans@miamioh.edu. And I look forward to working with you.